I'm William Wagener for Take Back America, live Friday here on the studio. I'm taking off my hat for you people that have the intelligence and the integrity to tune in. Because what you will hear and see tonight, you will not find on the local CBS, Fox News, CNN, or all the network weird TV with spinning lights and voluptuous blondes. What I have is something better. You've heard me talk many times about how Julie Witherspoon got screwed, even though she was serving in the U.S. Army. She got screwed, and then she really got screwed after a divorce by her husband, who was a pedophile. Referee, what was his name? Fiorello. Should they haul him in on the carpet and have them indicted for multiple violations of their civil liberties, felony evidence?
They absolutely need to. They need to review the case. They need to look at facts. Look at facts. Look at fact. Look at fact. Look at facts.
Yeah, he raped her when she was still in high school and he was her band teacher. You've heard me talk about, oh yeah, Marion Krause, who wrote this thick book documenting, and Marion Krause was here live on the show, and she documented page after page of the crimes committed not only by her attorney that she paid money for, but by the city attorney up there in Oregon. She also wrote this book, Abolished Oregon State Bar. But she couldn't get anybody to do anything about all these crimes. And I'm talking about documented crimes. No one would help her. Not her DA, not the Oregon Attorney General. And we talked to him. I personally talked to him. And I also talked to his chief assistant. And they said, we're looking into it. Well, it's been 4 years later. They're still looking into it. So all of this brings me to the point where I'm looking for solutions. You've heard me talk about Mary E. Webster's latest edition of the Federalist Papers and why they're important. We've done shows about that, but tonight I have something even better for you. Some of you will remember me. I don't get a cut out of Aphrodite Jones's book, Michael Jackson, The Conspiracy, but you can see my interview with her that turned her head around after the verdict came in not guilty, and she was saying, oh, come on, William, you know he did something at some time. And I said, Aphrodite Jones, didn't you see the evidence day after day? She said, no, I skipped every couple of days. I said, well, then you didn't see it. Go read the record. And she did. And that's when she wrote the book and said, you were right, William. It was a conspiracy. It was a setup. So then there's this book, which I talked about years ago. I can't find someone to produce this show. There's a fish in the courthouse. This is about the corruption of the judges in Ventura County. And this guy was a cop in Ventura County. And they ran him out of the county. I mean, he documents which judge got to be a judge because she slept with Judge so-and-so and then she gets promoted. He documents it and nothing happened. You've heard me talk about my favorite dentist, Leonard G. Horowitz, his book. I mean, we talked about this a decade ago. Nobody's stopping them from poisoning us with vaccines. And I also talked to you about this gal's book, Judy Wood. This is written like somebody wrote a PhD. This was a PhD thesis. And she has some amazing pictures I've never seen anywhere else, but they're in her book. But nobody has held the 9/11 Commission responsible for deliberately sabotaging the investigation. Nobody. Yet, tonight with me on the show, oh, and I can't forget, my favorite. The book, I interviewed the author, Philip F. Nelson, his book, LBJ, The Mastermind. Have you ever seen this, Anthony? Anthony Williams is with us. Welcome to the show. Anthony Williams.
Thank you.
Private Attorney General. Private Attorney General. This book documents how the Vice President of the United States, the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, that gay man who was diddling his number 2 guy, Mr. Tolson, these two were next-door neighbors everywhere they lived in Washington, D.C. Between Hoover, head of the FBI, and Mr. Lyndon Baines Johnson, the psychopath from Texas, and the CIA agent, who was a young dude then, his name was George Herbert Walker Bush. These people, along with Clint Murchison, it's all documented in Nelson's book. You ought to read the book. It's about when the coup d'etat happened November 22nd, 1963 in Dallas. And it was all set up. Like Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, nothing happens in politics unless somebody made it happen that way.
That's correct.
There is no coincidence. There ain't no accidents. Nothing happens in politics unless they want it to happen. Tonight, I have the pleasure, and I rarely do this, we're going to spend the whole show. And I think it's going to be, what did you say, jaw-dropping and bra-popping? We have in Mr. Williams here a man who has taken it upon himself to enforce the law when you're a crooked county district attorney like Tony Rackauckus in Orange County or Joyce Dudley in Santa Barbara County. But it's really hard to find an honest district attorney. Even if they start out honest,
Right.
the push to go corrupt is just tremendous. It's unbelievable what happens. So tell me, Mr. Williams, where were you born?
Born in Pineville, Louisiana.
And your father's name was?
Willie Williams.
And your mother's name was?
Barbara Williams.
And how many brothers and sisters do you have?
3 sisters and 2 brothers.
Are any of them wanting to be private attorney generals?
No.
Are they older than you?
All but one.
All but one. So you're the little guy in the family totem pole.
Right.
You got to prove yourself.
Right.
And you did.
Yes.
You went and did something. What caused you to want to do what you're doing?
Well, I got caught in the criminal justice system on a check charge that I shouldn't have been charged with. I fought it for about 2 years, had to hire an attorney. He basically told me to plead guilty. It would be easier, even though I was innocent.
Of course.
And
Easier
at that
for
point,
him.
Right. So, and I was like, well, why should I have to plead guilty for something I didn't do that I know I was innocent of? He said, well, Mr. Williams, the way it works in this county is they have a 100% conviction rate, and they're not going to take it to trial if they know they can't beat you. So you're going to either plead guilty or they're going to make your life miserable.
This was Louisiana.
No, this was Alabama.
Oh, Alabama.
Yeah, this was in Alabama. So I had to plead guilty. So when I went to go plead guilty, I said, I'm not pleading guilty because I'm guilty. I'm pleading guilty because you're forcing me to plead guilty. And so the judge was like, I cannot accept that. I cannot accept that plea. So I at least wanted to get it on the record. Even at that time, I didn't know the law, but I knew to at least put that on the record. And so once I pleaded guilty, they gave me 2 years probation. And I made a promise to myself. I said I would never walk in this courtroom again and not be able to defend my own rights. And that's what got me started on this path.
That's what did it. Everybody has something. And that was what year was that?
That was 1999. It was 2001 when I pled guilty. And from 2001 to now is what I've been doing.
Wow. And you've got an actual badge issued by who?
By United States Office of the Private Attorney General. It's a de jure federal agency that myself and some other private attorney generals set up. It's not a de facto governmental agency, it's a de jure.
De jure.
Right. De jure means the lawful and rightful government and not the de facto, which is the government that the people think is lawful and the one that they presently obey, but that's not lawful.
I understand you, actually. I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure most people do. There's a difference between what's statutorily legal and what's constitutionally lawful. And what Mr. Williams is talking about is the we, the people, constitutional lawful.
Right.
And that's not what we're living in. What we're living in is something akin to Nazi Germany. In fact, I think we're actually worse than Nazi Germany. Even under Hitler's Nazi Germany, they did not have little social workers with little badges and a cop back them up, walk into your house and say, we're taking these children, emergency. It's an emergency taking of your children. You're like, wait, what happened to my trial? What happened to my 7th Amendment?
Right, 6th Amendment.
7th Amendment says you can't take anything under common law worth more than $20 without giving me a jury trial before you take it. They just ignore that.
That's correct.
They just ignore it. So you're not living in the America that this we the people starts to document. You're living in a Nazified America where social workers can steal your children at will. I would call it kidnapping.
That's what exactly it is.
That's what it really is, government kidnapping. And it's for profit. They get incentive bonuses for stealing children. Was that ever an issue in your life where they get into this? Did you ever help any of the moms or dads that had their kids taken?
Well, not in my
Practice.
journey. Yeah, not in my journey. My journey mostly was criminal justice system, getting guys out, the criminal justice system that was wrongfully incarcerated, wrongfully charged, wrongfully convicted, foreclosure defense, tax relief, fighting against the IRS, because if people don't know, the IRS is not a governmental entity. It's a private corporation, which you don't have to pay them unless you
Volunteer. But they get real nasty if you don't volunteer.
Right. If you don't know the law.
If you don't know the law.
Right.
In fact, if you don't believe what he just said, because April 15th is coming up really soon, and I'm going to have to dig up that old footage you haven't used for 10 years. I don't have it tonight. But if you take your 1040 form and look in the bottom left or bottom right corner, there should be a federal ID number, because every federal government form has a federal, and 1040 is not it. That's just the title of the form. There's a little number down in the lower left and right, and the 1040 doesn't have it. At least the last time I filled one out, they didn't have it. So you know that's not an official government form. So why are you paying those people? Because you don't want to go to jail.
Right.
Just as he said, I'm pleading guilty because you're forcing me to. And that's why you're paying the tax, because you know somebody will come knocking on your door and say, come with me.
Right.
You didn't pay your taxes.
Right.
Well, I volunteered 10 cents and I mailed my dime. Isn't that enough? No. That brings me to my interviews I did with Erwin Schiff out of Las Vegas, Nevada, who's now sitting in a federal prison, I think somewhere in northern Indiana. And he proved to me, he had the IRS code book. He said, look, if you don't pay the liquor tax, there's a penalty. If you don't pay this tax, there's a penalty. And we flipped through it, and he says, now look, federal personal income tax, look for the penalty. And there wasn't any.
Right.
It's not there. So why are you paying? You're paying because you know, or if you've watched my show, Erwin Schiff went to prison. But he didn't go to prison because of that. He went to prison because of a book. I forgot to bring it tonight. It's called The Federal Mafia. You ever seen his book?
I've never seen that book.
It's called The Federal Mafia. There's no naked women. There's no cleavage. There's no calls to overthrow the government violently. All it does is detail point by point why you can write the U.S. Treasury and say, give me back my last 3 years' income taxes. You took it fraudulently from me by deception. And I did that interview. It's on my YouTube clip with KCAL 42, or was it KCAL 41? And he held up, and I blacked out his address. But you can see, he got $41,000 back. He lived in Las Vegas. He got $41,000 back. So, you're down in Alabama. They do this to you. When did you get your private attorney general office set up, and how many years did it get you to that point?
2002 is when I officially set up. From that point on, I basically was a lone wolf. Didn't know too many people that were knowledgeable in the venue I was undertaking. Didn't know a lot of people that weren't scared to do what I was doing. Because, when they come with the police officers, because I got my door got kicked in by U.S. Marshals. Got taken to jail for a warrant for a driving on a suspended license.
Is that how you met Paul Murphy?
No, I met him.
He was one of the U.S. Marshals that kicked in your door?
No, but this was the state of Tennessee. I fought the state of Tennessee. I ended up having to sue the governor, 3 judges, 4 police officers, the DA, a public defender, the director of Department of Revenue, Department of Motor Vehicles, and all their wives. And
I like that. Did you watch that Charlie Sprinkle thing I did?
yes,
You did?
yes.
You noticed he said I sued all their wives
Yes.
as aiding and abetting in the
Yes,
crime.
and I used that. I sure did.
I love it.
I sure did.
Charlie's watching from heaven. He
Right.
said, "Attaboy,
That's
Mr.
right.
Williams."
I sure did. And when, we had to go to court, so, I got the governor and, the judges and all them having to answer, this lawsuit that I filed. And they basically left me alone because they saw I wasn't going nowhere. They saw that no matter how many times they arrested me unlawfully and illegally, that even if you locked me up, I'm still going to fight for truth. I'm still going to fight for justice. They end up banning me from going to that jail because I was teaching all the inmates how to win their cases. So
That reminds me of a young guy who was a libertarian candidate, and they arrested him on some drug charge. They sent a female, a very pretty, voluptuous female, to ask him for a little pot. And he said, "Oh, well, I don't sell that stuff. I don't know where you get it." "Oh, come on, honey." So, all right, here's a dime's worth, Gotcha.
right.
They put him in the jail out here near Bakersfield somewhere, and I don't know what he got, but they let him out 4 or 5 months early because he was teaching the other inmates
Right.
how to fight for their rights. And they just said, "You're just too much trouble. We'll just get out of here.
Right.
This guy knows too much. Get him out of here."
Right.
Well, that's good. So when did you sign on your second private attorney general to join your group? What year was that?
Well,
Or who was that?
2009 is when the really big push when I started getting more people. They started seeing the YouTube videos of me, confronting the police officers, on traffic stops, going to the police station, confronting them. 2000, I think it was 11, I confronted the FBI. The FBI started calling around a lot of my clients and telling them that I was on the FBI most wanted list.
Really?
Yeah.
The FBI called your clients
Yes.
and told them that?
Yes, the FBI called my clients, said I was on the FBI most wanted list, that I changed my number every 30 days, that I travel around the country defrauding people. And so when my clients were calling me, I said, "Now, are you sure that this was the FBI?" So we looked the number up, reverse looked it. Sure enough, it was the FBI. So I had 3 of the clients to come with me as witnesses to the FBI office as witnesses. I videotaped it. It's on YouTube. You can just type in Anthony Confronts FBI, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. The agent was scared to come out his office to confront me. They sent an agent named John down, and he basically asked me when I saw this agent to be reasonable with him. Yes. Asked me to be reasonable with him.
Can we go find that clip? Will we find that on YouTube, Randy?
Anthony Confronts FBI. Part 3 is the bulk of the conversation.
Part 3.
Yeah, but
Anthony confronts FBI. Whose channel is it on?
It's just when you just type in the YouTube channel, it automatically
Okay,
come
just
up.
anywhere
Yeah,
on YouTube.
Yeah, anywhere
Anthony
on
Confronts
YouTube. Yeah.
Okay, so 2009, that's when the big housing bust starts to hit, and they start to scream, "Too big to fail.
Right.
We got to bail out the banks so we
Right.
can save America."
Right.
Was that crap?
All of it was crap, and I'm gonna tell you why. What you alluded to earlier with the IRS, most people don't realize the Federal Reserve System was set up in 1913,
Right?
but the IRS was also set up in 1913.
That's true.
The exact same year, like you
Right.
said, what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said. Anything that happens, it was made to happen. It wasn't by happenstance. It wasn't by coincidence. It was planned that way. It was orchestrated that way. So from 1913 to 1933, they basically bankrupt the United States. So in 1933, the United States went completely bankrupt. That's when FDR suspended the gold standard,
That's correct.
But he gave the American people under House Joint Resolution 192 a remedy, but they never told nobody about it. So basically, if you're not one of the ones that's doing any research, you really don't know about this statute. But what
Tell
they
us
did,
about that statute.
Well, it basically says that the United States is obligated to pay all the debts of its citizens, dollar for dollar, because they took the citizens' ability to pay any debt when he suspended the gold standard. Because according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8 through 10, the only lawful money is gold and silver.
That's what it says.
Right. So the Federal Reserve notes that people think is money. is actually a debt instrument. You're just passing along a debt. That's the reason why debt ceiling keeps increasing. You know, no matter how much money the American people paying out, it never seems to decrease.
They don't want it to
Right,
decrease.
exactly.
That's what keeps them empowered.
Exactly. The way the system with the...
That was 1933 or 1934,
Well, 1933 is when
We went
they
bankrupt.
went bankrupt, and also when the House Joint Resolution was passed into law.
which
Now,
was which House resolution?
House Joint Resolution 192.
192.
Right.
And so we're supposed to be able to send our tax bill to the government and have them pay it for us?
That's correct. Any bill, no matter what it is.